Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Another podcast, another day, another dollar. Well, maybe another dollar, who knows? With my good friend Pete Komalafe. Gosh, it's been we've had a few episodes now. If you haven't ever seen our previous episodes, we like to talk about money. We kind of like to put the worlds to rights, and it's no BS. And I'm going to come out with one of our favorite quotes. Control the controllables and take action in your life. Today, let me just set the tone. We are talking about the difference between the baby boomer generation, millennials seeing that change of hard work into smart work. The world is very different. You can earn a lot of money now. You don't have to dig holes, lay bricks. Pete, do you want to kick it off? We've been in a massive transition. Some people are a little bit annoyed watching the millennials make these moves, but let's kick it off.
It's a different world, isn't it, at the end of the day? And there are so many arguments on each side of the fence. The boomers will say, well, you guys have got so much opportunity now and things that weren't available when I was like a teenager. You can, and people, and let's not get it twisted. Millennials earn way more money than boomers did. But whilst it's relative and it's completely, different worlds, they're quite bitter when it comes to the conversation I've seen at least around buying a property and how difficult that is. They don't seem to understand that side of the reality for millennials and this new generation now. And when you kind of look at the rebuttal to that, it's like, well, you guys have got you've had the best of this country. I mean, and this is particularly topical given where we are right now with a new budget on October 30th, taxes going up, the government feeling as though they're trying to take you for every penny that you earn. It could be said that the boomers have had the best of this country's wealth and that phase of growth that the country's enjoyed, and millennials aren't necessarily going to reap that reward. I mean, state pension is probably one of the prime things that you talk about. Property market is probably one of the prime things you can also talk about. You bought when property prices were relatively low in comparison to your wages at the time, and you've reaped the rewards of these properties increasing in value considerably to the point that, you can sell at 600, 700,000, 800,000, depending on where you are in the country, with lots of equity in it. And that then helps your offsprings if you have any. And, it's a completely different world, but the arguments are valid ones. And it's really interesting sometimes observing and listening to the debate between millennials and boomers, because the boomers do get bitter. It's like, the one thing that they always say that really kind of ticks me off is, avocado on toast. If you stop having avocado on toast and your frappuccino lattes, like maybe you'll be able to afford it a little bit more if you work just a little bit harder. It's like we're not sit here just like twiddling our thumbs doing nothing, you know what I mean? And how many avocados and toast is actually going to add up to any significant, amount of money over time?
And let's face it, buying avocado and toast in a cafe is probably going to add up to the same if you were going to buy in all the ingredients and cook it your damn self anyway. So,
Yeah, I mean, it may be a little bit more cost effective, but I get, you see what I mean? If you want avocado and toast, you want avocado and toast. It is what it is.
I think, if we look at the government as well, the majority of people still voting are still boomers. So majority of it is in
Yeah.
favour, and they're still voting for old sort of capital ways as well. You don't really get a lot of millennials and Gen Z, and certainly like Gen Alpha, that are going down to the local like town hall and voting. They're not doing it. Whereas you
Yeah.
are still getting, Derek and Dave and Lucy and Barbara who are willing to walk down there, and they're voting in favour of boomers. So I've seen it firsthand. When I do videos about walking slow in the workplace, look after number one, be the last one in, the first one out, work smart, not hard, it riles them, absolutely riles them. But they're not willing to understand we are in different times. And like both you and me, I've had this conversation so many times with people who are more digital, especially in the online space, right? Is that our working hours could be thinking in the shower. It could be sitting on the sofa on your phone making notes. Like that is the way that we operate. And when they see that, it is classed as, well, it's a lazy generation. They're
Yeah.
always on
Yeah.
phones and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, it's like, no, but that's where that is where the business and the brand is built. Like we are in a
Yeah.
different world. And let's face it, you just touched on something we'll dive into more. Baby boomers were buying property for 4 pistachio nuts and 6 raspberries. You can't now, but we can make a lot more money in a month. We can make their yearly salary in a month at times. And they don't like that. But they were buying assets for peanuts.
I think that's true. And I think you made a really good point around the whole political stance of things. And I think this is why it's important to be engaged in the political scene, or at least be aware of what the politics means for your finances and your personal circumstances. Because you're right, the politicians naturally, and maybe it's one of those things where as you get older, you become more aware of politics and how it impacts you, that because you effectively become more politically active because you're aware of how these things impact you. And so naturally, the politicians will pander to the generation that will vote, which will generally be boomers, older individuals, right? Because especially with where we are right now, one of the big topics of conversation next month, if they do this, will be inheritance tax. The fact that, if they reduce nil rate bands and all the allowances, well, they won't have to pay it, but their kids will have to pay it. But it's still tax on something that they've already paid tax on. And particularly when you talk about property, it can be pretty substantial. So clearly, the politicians are going to go into pander there. And you could argue, whilst maybe not as many young people, millennials, are involved in politics, we should be involved in politics.
Yeah.
To great intent as well, to say, actually, you know what, you just can't pander to the older generation when you're setting policies. You kind of need to pay attention to us as well, because we're going to be the ones who are going to be here from a long-term longevity point of view, who are actively working, paying taxes. Let's not get into the whole conversation of, how much the state pension costs and who's paying for that. I mean, I see it in my comment section when I talk about the state pension. They are very, very angry because, and I don't say this, but it feels as though when I talk about the state pension being unsustainable, they feel like I'm saying that they are leeches and they haven't paid their dues. It's like, no, that's not what I'm saying. Just the way the system is built, it's not sustainable because there are too many of you going into the state pension at this point in time with a triple lock and all of this kind of stuff. And it's the younger people right now who have to pay the taxes to make that sustainable for the future. Long term, it's just not.
And I feel as well, like the millennials and the Gen Z and the new generations coming through, and I even feel it as well. Sometimes I can't be bothered to vote because we have so much more exposure to what happens now and how corrupt it is and everything that happened during the pandemic and everything, and what a shams it was. We have seen so much and we've been exposed to so much that I have lost faith in any party, in any politician. Whereas I think the boomers will still show up at the town halls and vote because they've grown up with the news, channels 1, 2, and 3, the newspapers. Bless my mum, she still believes that the Royals are squeaky clean. And they've grown up with that, right? So they still think. Whereas I think the newer generation, we've seen so much, and because of social media and all the outlets, so much has been exposed. We're like, what's the point? I might as well just focus on myself and build my own business, my own brand, look after number one, because none of these lot are. And we've seen it year after year after year. And especially with what's going on with the tax, this is where there's this massive divide of millennials and the new generations are lazy and they don't know what they're doing and they're misinformed and all this lot and they're just on their phones all the time. Whereas actually, I think we have a great amount of knowledge and we're just like, what's the point? It's going to make bugger all difference anyway, because everyone's serving their own, lining of their own pocket. I think that's where we are. People have just lost faith, haven't they?
Yeah. But again, it comes back to what we always talk about, control the controllables, right? Like, don't get it twisted. I've been covering a lot more of this stuff on my channel on YouTube recently because these things will impact what happens in terms of the tax that you pay and the money that is ultimately going to be left after you pay tax. But ultimately, you can't necessarily influence what they're going to do. This is how I describe the UK at the moment. I'll describe it as a boat that's been out to sea for centuries. And it was once the biggest, the fastest. And back then, it was fantastic. It was great. Everyone had a great time. It brought in goods, money, reputation, all this kind of great stuff. And that boat now is just this decrepit thing that is just struggling along. And it's unfortunate, really, because we're in this state right now where, well, from an economic fiscal point of view, they've got to make some pretty tough decisions. And as a millennial, you're looking at it thinking, well, this is going to damage my chances of getting on a property ladder, of being able to, do all kinds of things. but you can't influence that necessarily, even if you voted. I mean, like the last election was a joke. Labour and Tories, those were the two choices. Like those were the two choices that could realistically run the country. Like it almost feels like it's a casino where you're kind of set up to fail
Yeah.
almost, and you have no influence. And so it comes back to control your controllables, control your controllables. You can control what you do on a day-to-day basis. You control how much money you earn. Okay, yes, there are some tax loopholes that you can take advantage of. It's your responsibility to ensure that you understand how those work, so you pay less tax legally. Don't do anything illegal, guys. Please don't. But control your controllables, because those things you can influence day to day, every minute of the day, 9 to 5, every single day, every week, every month, every year. What the government does, yeah, you get the opportunity to vote once every, what, 4 or 5 years. That's it, really. So control what happens on a day-to-day basis with you, and don't be influenced too much by the external world and some of this negativity that you often see all the time. Just be informed.
Mate, I'd second it. And I think one of the conversations, I'm trying to think of the comments that always pop up, especially when I do topics around like old narratives that baby boomers will still talk about. And it's things like, if I do a video on walk slow in your workplace, don't work hard, be the last one in and the first one out, it's the first comments from the baby boomers that are absolute riled. They are infuriated when I say that. And what they've grown up with, baby boomers, is serving your employer, working hard, loyal to the hand that feeds you. And, you know, over time, I think
Yeah,
if
but
you
back then, mate.
savvy,
But at the same time, back then, mate, they had defined benefit pensions that they would get. You know,
yeah,
gold-plated pensions that you can have this job, sit there for 10, 15, 20 odd years. They'll give you a gold-plated pension at the end. That is not right. That is not the reality for a lot of millennials these days. Like a defined contribution pension, if you're not putting money into it, it's no guarantee whatsoever. Imagine if someone said to someone today and goes, right, okay, whilst it's a bit of a trade-off for what we're thinking about and how we work right now, we said, if you work for me for the next 5 years, I will guarantee you a proportion of your income or your salary that you got here when you retire. Let's just say it's 10 grand a year, guaranteed for life. People will probably be a little bit more inclined to be like, okay, I might give this a good go and maybe give you a
equity.
little bit more. But
Yeah.
the workplace take the piss though. Like this whole, you're expected to do things outside of your work hours and all this stuff, and really running their employees into the ground and not really showing that much care. It's all about profit. That doesn't fly these days, mate. It just doesn't. I think people are kind of awake to that because it's a different world. There's lots of opportunities out there, and why should you if all they're going to do is replace you at a heartbeat? Like
Mate,
I've been in that space. I ended up in hospital once. I cracked my ribs, went to meetings all week, got admitted to hospital, and literally was told if you had come like 2 3 hours later, you'll be dead. And I'm like, what am I doing? Like, why? And
yeah.
he said, discretionary fund manager, yeah, you're paying me good money or goodish money compared to where I am right now. But it's like they'll replace me the following day. An ad will literally go in the paper the following day. And like I've what jeopardized my own health
Yeah.
because I've got to do that meeting. I'm going to go do that meeting. No thanks. Like, no, absolutely not.
This has teed us up. I want anyone who's watching at this point, I want to offer some advice. Do not listen to baby boomers on anything. Times have changed. Don't listen to them when they tell you to work hard. Don't listen to them when they tell you you need to get your hands dirty. Don't listen to baby boomers when they tell you business is risky, because they're still living in the 80s and 90s. Starting a business is not risky. And working smart is the way you move forward and develop. And as we were just saying, control the controllables in your life. You can take control of everything. You don't give your control away to an employer, or as they would say, the baby boomers, your master, the hand that feeds you. It's such an old way, and we are in different times. We are in different times. I want to just go over the whole having some responsibility, taking accountability of your life, because of the fact that if you became ill, if you lost your job, you'll always be replaced in 72 hours. And that's the difference. That was a generation where they would serve the master. Now it's a case of actually, I've seen the amount people are used and abused. I'm going to take control. So do you think that's a big difference? Like I find it weird, mate, that back in the day, and I know it was all that's all that they knew, but to actually turn around and say, because this is what it is, an employer and serving them and thinking that is the only way, and that's predominantly what most adults did back then, is allow an employer to look after their family, right? That's really what it is. Whereas now, I think younger people and millennials, the millennials saw the change, right? We saw the hard work and then we saw the digital age. And I feel that we have this ability to think outside the box. And I feel that the baby boomers don't want to realize that actually, if you apply a bit of discipline, a bit of self-education and just move with the times, your life can change. Like it,
Yeah, but they want it. They've not been exposed to the things that we have been, though, mate. They don't see it from that perspective because they've never experienced it. Like it's like trying to say to someone, okay, look, you're in a box right here, and inside this box, these are the rules of engagement. But then you tell them, or they start to see, hang on a second, there's a little peephole through this box, and what I'm seeing out there doesn't make sense to what's in here. It's the same thing. They can't relate to it because they weren't exposed to the internet. I mean, look, even if you go back to like 1998, 1997, 96, right? If you wanted to do any research, you go to a library. Like now, it's on your phone, like ChatGPT. Like can you imagine what that's like, mate? It's like someone's put an encyclopedia in your phone. You don't have to go to a library. You don't have to spend hours like trying to understand this thing. You can put it into ChatGPT, boom, it's right there. Everything you would ever need to know. So
yeah.
they don't see it from that point of view. So when someone says, well, actually, property prices are this high, but people are earning this much money and the workplace has changed, it doesn't compute because they have no way of making it relatable to themselves because they've come from an age where things were like this. And don't get me wrong, mate, in 20, 40 years' time, things probably would have moved so forward that will be like, even I will be like, what? What? You're doing
Yeah.
what now? It's all relative. It's all relative.
I think the other thing that's frustrating that again, as two individuals that create a lot of content, you'll always have baby boomers that claim everything to be a scam as well. I've seen a lot of that
Hmm.
come up in the comments is that people fear what they don't understand, right? There's that saying, isn't there? You know, if they don't
That's right. Yeah.
understand it, they stay well away from it and they label it dodgy, scam, stay away, don't touch it with a barge pole. Are we talking about something that's relevant? Do you think this is a conversation that needs to be had, or do we just let bygones be bygones and we just put up with comments and when we're putting ourselves out there? Because again, I'll put a comment out there about university or don't go to university. A baby boomer will always pop up and say, "Don't listen to this guy. Go to college, go to uni, and get a good doctor's job." And I'm like, no. I'm like, no, no, because I'm trying to empower people to live a life of freedom. So you're not at 68 years old with a broken back, stressed and no hair. Like I want
Yeah.
people to actually enjoy life.
Yeah.
Is it a
I mean,
conversation or bygones be bygones?
I think it's a bit of both, mate. I think there's a conversation to be had in there for sure. I mean, look, if you look at society and the way society operates, and maybe this is where traditional jobs, roles need to change to a certain extent. You're always going to need doctors, engineers, lawyers, those people that the fabric of society is built around. They provide that essential service, right? And for some of those, you do have to go to university. But does the notion of university need to change? So it's not a place that you go to where you're paying your 9,700 quid per year and you're doing a 7-year course and you're walking out with 30, 40,000 pounds worth of debt. Does university evolve to the point where actually it's more online, it's more digital, it's AI led? It gives you the practical things that you actually need to know, and then that phases out traditional ideas of university. But again, it's one of those things where it's like we don't know how it's going to evolve. AI is a huge thing in regards to that, mate. It's like when I look back over my journey in my household, you were a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, and if you want one of those three, by God, you would. And like literally, my mom and dad, when I went to school, my parents are Nigerian. You would get a. I did it in Nigeria, right? To get this, I took about 9 subjects, all sciences. If you failed one subject, you take the entire year again. If you failed one subject, my mum specifically would whoop me. So it's like that's the way the world was back then. If someone said to me, there were YouTubers. I mean, look, there are gamers, YouTubers earning 6 figures, like stupid money. If someone said to me 5 years ago, 6 years ago, that I could have a 6-figure business making YouTube videos and running a podcast, I'd be like, nah. But the world has changed, and I think a lot of baby boomers are not in that place where they're able to catch up to with the way things are right now. And so you have a little bit of a point when you talk about don't listen to them because they don't know what it's like. I think old notions die hard at the end of the day. But
Yeah.
university, I mean, do I wish that I went to university? Yeah, maybe for the experience. Maybe I might have been a little bit further in my career. But then again, if I'd gone to university, I would have studied medicine. I wanted to be a surgeon, a neurosurgeon specifically. Would I earn good money as a neurosurgeon? Yes.
You
Would I
pursue
enjoy it?
it.
I don't know. But it's a
Yeah.
different reality. I can't even think about what that would have been like because that wasn't my path. I couldn't afford to go to university, so I didn't.
Yeah. I think it's important for us to have the conversation because we're in a day and age where we have this abundance of information, and it would be stupid not to put it out there and pass it on if you mean well. And that's where I'm coming from. And I do find it frustrating where, let's just talk about the money for a second. I did one video where I said, ignore baby boomers when it comes to money, because we are in a day and age where you can earn significant amounts of money in shorter periods of time if you know what you're doing and you learn and you really apply and you get those key
Hmm.
traits, entrepreneurial traits, and show up every day and just evolve. And you can really earn great amounts of money, which then makes you question, would the journey of university and formal education was it really worth it? The answer is no. I mean, I'm someone who didn't go to college, I didn't go to uni, and I didn't, apart from PE, I didn't get any GCSEs, right? I failed all of them. But yet I know that I'm bringing in more than a high paid doctor within certain fields. I don't work 80 hours a week. I'm not stressed and I'm not understaffed. And I have a very tight, lean kind of team around me. And it's kind of, I've got myself to a stage of minimal risk, really, because most of it is, pretty automated and marketing heavy. So I think it's important that we pass on this information. But when the baby boomers pop up and they're like, don't listen to this guy, work hard as a plumber, it's like, no, because I'm now educating plumbers who don't want to be on the tools anymore. And the baby boomers that are looking to evolve and are like, do you know what? I need to move with the times. I need to be online. I need to be branding. I've seen the pool guy. I've seen the cheeky carpenters. I've seen the bald builders. I went to the TikTok summit recently and they talked about a mechanic who started live streaming. His live streaming was earning more than his hourly rate as a mechanic. He set up on his own. He's now a great content creator and now an independent, in-demand mechanic. And it's like he
See that?
adapted.
I think that's the difference, though, mate. I think the difference is, can you do what you're doing under your own steam, in opposed to doing it for somebody?
Yeah.
Because that's the big differentiator. I do what I do. I've worked in financial services for 18 years, so I've been there in corporate world with golden shackles, and I understand that. Is it rewarding? It was at some stage, and then at one point it became a pain. What I do now, though, under my own steam, is way more rewarding because I do it for myself. I do it for my own benefit. I'm building my own personal brand. I got an email saying the other day, asking me for sources for my own Wikipedia. It's stupid. Like a Wikipedia on me. I'm relatively a nobody, but I started doing something that I enjoy online, and I think that's the big differentiator. Can you do what you want to do under your own steam? And that breeds a whole generation of entrepreneurial spirits. Yes, there's a lot of competition. There's lots of stuff that you need to kind of master, but this is where it comes back to what we're talking about. Control your controllables every single day in your 9 to 5, in your weekly, monthly, yearly routine. If you can do that, you've got a better chance of success.
Yeah, mate, I'd mirror all of it. And anyone listening, this is it. We're in a world of opportunity. It's whether you expose yourself to it, whether you choose to actually adopt all of these. I think people as well, until they taste a bit of it or they actually try it, they don't believe that it's real. I feel that a lot of it, again, is written off. It's like, it's not real. It's a scam. Stick with your employer, work hard, be a tradesperson, go into medicine, become a doctor, do whatever. That's the way that you're going to secure your life. I think what you're going to do is you're actually going to set yourself up for a very long, stressful life. And as we were saying about the pensions, we could talk about pensions all day, right? And we're not going to get into it now, but I don't think people realize that the pension system and the changes and the amount of debt that we're in and the debt that will be called in at some point, surely, and all these, what is it, 26 billion that is just floating out there in the UK that hasn't been collected, all this money of pension money. And it's so different now for people who are sub 35, when they get to 68 and 70, and I have no doubt it'll push to 72 until you can take your
Oh
pension.
yeah, well, I've been reading the paper on
Well,
that today, literally just today. It's
yeah.
bleak to say the least. Bleak to say the least.
So within this kind of like reality of what does your life look like, baby boomers had that blessing of, well, I'll have my pension and my state pension and all this lot. I feel that millennials and the new generations, they have to be more savvy because they have to think the government isn't going to look after me. If I
Mhm.
can't create my own pension in 40 years of smart working, I'm trying not to. I'm trying to swear less on my YouTube now to make sure it doesn't affect it. I was about to go, but I'm effed. So I think it's important, again, going back to, confirming it is important that we say to the baby boomers, shut it. You need to do this because you need to take control of your own pension. I just want to ask, do you think that people aren't willing to jump ahead 30 years? And that's quite a negative thing for most people because they're not willing to go, right, what does my life look like at 60 years old? Because I don't want to think of myself at 60.
Mate, listen, we're not wired to.
Yeah.
It takes an intentional effort to do that, literally to think ahead 30 years, particularly in your 20s, mate. Did you ever think about what life would be like when you're like, I wouldn't even say 50, when you're 40,
Yeah.
30? Were you
I,
thinking that far
for
ahead?
me,
No.
for me, I did.
Me, I didn't. Mate, listen,
Yeah.
I was out drinking, having a great old time. I wasn't thinking, what would it be like when I hit 40? Didn't think of that at all. And I think as human beings, we're not hardwired to. It
Yeah.
takes intentional effort to be able to do that. And I try and do that with people when I do coaching. It's like, let's really take a step back and think about what does it look like then? Because the reality is, if you can give yourself a little bit of a glimpse into what you want it to be like, you can start to do things now that put you in the best position to achieve what you aspire for it to be in 20 odd, 30 odd years into the future. But as human beings, we're not wired to. And I think society to a certain extent isn't conducive to that thought. Society now is built around consumerism, right? It's that
Yeah.
instant gratification. I need to have this. I want to drive that car. I want to wear these clothes. I want to go to these places. It's all about the now, 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 now. Because business is driving profit now, right? So it's not society. An environment that allows people to think that far ahead. You need external factors, which is why I do what I do, to get you to take a pause and be like, okay, right, what am I doing this for? What's the big picture?
Mate, as we come to a close, I want to ask you, I'll tell you what, I'll rock and roll first to give you a bit of an idea, but just to nab your top tip to people listening to this, who might be, in the thought process of thinking, oh, I've been listening to my parents too much, or I've been letting sort of external influences from baby boomers, or I don't know whether to, take an opportunity. I love a quote by Jeff Bezos. The rich get
Hmm.
richer because the poor think every opportunity is a scam. And that typically is a baby boomer mindset. My top
Yep.
tip, dude, for anyone listening, this is my sort of top tip is number one, do not take advice from baby boomers who have not done it. If a baby boomer tells you do not start a business because it's risky and 90% of businesses fail, question them and say, how many businesses have you started, my old chum? Because the answer will be
Hmm.
zero. And then what I would say is embrace opportunity in every new door that opens and look after number one and control the controllables. I really want to hit that home. We talk about that all the time, but there really isn't an area in your life that you can't control if you're willing to adopt key traits of discipline, consistency, learning, and around the right people. So
Hmm.
I would say ignore old narratives and never take advice of people that haven't done what you want to do or have never achieved the type of success that you want to achieve. I think that's a basic rule, but that would be my top
Hmm.
tip. What about you?
My top tip would be to not give up your power too much. I think in this world where we are right now, it is so, especially with social media, and social media is a gift and a curse. There's so much opportunity that comes with it, but at the same time, comparison is the thief of what? Of gratitude, or whatever the phrase is. Don't give up your power. You can see things online that will make you think, oh, I should be doing that, and you feel really crap about yourself. Don't give up your power. Understand that you have control over pretty much anything and everything. If you can visualize it in your head, you can make it happen. And I'm testament to that. I believe that 100% in my, like, for everything. If you can see it in your mind's eye, you can make it happen, because something weird happens psychologically. You just end up steer into that thing. So if you've got an idea, really sit down, like flesh it out. I want to do this. What does it look like? Like really flesh it out, write it down, because when you commit it to paper as well, it's
Yeah.
coming out from just here. You're making it real on paper. Don't give up your power. Don't give up and think, oh, I can't do it, or I'm not good enough, or, things are against me. I'm hearing that a lot these days. It pisses me off. Oh, the government's against us and they just want to see us down. And what's the point? Like, if you think like that, then you are effed, basically. Like, give yourself more credit, believe in yourself a little bit more, and don't give up your power. Really take the time to think about what it is that you actually want. Put it down on paper and start to make those first steps towards it, because you'll be amazed at how much you can achieve in like 6 months, let alone 12 months and 2 years and 3 years.
Invest a year into yourself and see what happens. And I would second the whole writing it down. Too many people have a lot of ideas, but it never comes to fruition. They never write it down. Do you know what? Actually, one last thing as well. When people talk about property, this is my advice. Do not try and get on the property ladder if you want to get into property. It's too slow. My best advice, because the baby boomers had it easy for property. Millennials and new generations, they do not. This is how you get into property, right? You build a business, you work on cash flow, you cash stack, you double down on the business, you become really successful with the business, learn how to get a valuation of a business up, exit out the damn business, and do a pump and dump into property. And then you can buy
Hey,
what you want.
listen, that's golden, because, and I'm going to be interested to see what happens to all the property gurus. Like, honestly, mate, they make it sound as though you can make so much money. And like, literally, I'm literally going to be renting out a house soon. Do you know how slim the margins are? Unless you're doing things like HMOs and you've got multiple properties, like a huge, great big portfolio, mate, the tax on this, like the way they've set up the tax regime, hardly makes it worth it anymore. And there are other things that you can do, but capital intensive, time intensive. Like you just said there, you can build a business, cash flow the business, and then once you've got a lump sum, whack it into property. Yeah, but it's going to be interesting, mate. Property is always a very, very interesting conversation to be had, because I think there was a time when it was very, very favorable for landlords, and yeah, you could make some money. And I think a lot of the property guys have done very, very well with courses and all this kind of stuff. But you've got to really take a good look at it and be smart around what you're looking, and make sure you understand what you're doing first before you jump into this whole idea of property is going to be my big thing. Trust me, it's yeah, there's a lot to be said.
Punchy line coming up. Exposing. In fact, should I use the word? Oh, I'm going to be strong. Actually, I'm going to go with that. Fuck it. And I swore, God damn it. Exposing property education. This is what happens. You go for a 2-day free course. They bombard you with loads of different models. Then you're clustered with all these little floating ideas and light bulb moments. And then they just drop all these they sow these seeds of what you can do. And they just confuse you. And then you feel totally lost. Now there's a great deal. They'll always put someone on stage who is in £150,000 of debt, because your debt of 3,000, 4,000, 6,000 seems so small when this person took a risk and it paid off. And then they offer that 37% discount on that 26 grand. And if you're one of the first 5 to run to the back, you can have your hand held to success. And within 12 months, you'll have a property portfolio of £1 million, although there's a 60% mortgage on that. And they don't talk about the fact that you need assets. I mean, we could go into it. And then what happens is they become trapped. It's like any business. A business only becomes successful if you focus on one thing and grow it over 100,000. Alex Hormozi says it. Same with social media. You cannot grow on social media if you're doing a little bit on Instagram, a little bit of Facebook, a little bit of LinkedIn, a little bit of TikTok, a little bit of this. You go hard on one platform. And then when you're successful, move on to the next thing.
I'll second that, mate.
Mate,
and listen,
I talk about this.
What you just said there is the reason why our conversation the other day about this person who's asked me to collaborate, why I don't want to do it. I have had people who have gone to those seminars, sunk £10,000 into a property course. And I'm like, what did you learn? He goes, well, I learned something. It's okay. Could you have learned that on YouTube for free? Probably, because he didn't really give you the real strategies or that secret sauce that they promised, right? And now you don't have 10K seed money for the property investment itself. It's crazy. And that's why I'm questioning doing that collaboration with the person that we spoke about this week, because I'm like, I can see the benefit for him, But for
Oh, there's
me,
a big
no
benefit.
benefit. And I don't want to put my followers in that orbit to potentially
That will reflect on you.
be victimized. Yeah.
Yeah, that will reflect on you.
Funny
Mate,
enough, I've not actually returned that email just yet, so I
yeah.
might not after this conversation, to be fair, because that's kind of worked out in my head.
Next podcast, property, the truth of property. There we go. We'll have to do that one. Pete, amazing dude. Conversation of money on YouTube, conversation of money on Instagram. You know, we know the deal. It'll all be in the description. But my man, I love it. Always love it. And it's so, just Pete podcast. Yeah, see you in the morning. Great. Done.
Indeed, mate.
That's
Indeed.
it. Yeah, I love it. And this will be out very soon. So to anyone watching, by the way. So gonna wrap this up. Everyone, thanks so much. Go check out Pete's channel. Please do like and subscribe. Let us know in the comments your key takeaways or what you took from this video. And until next time, we will see you all very soon.